Welcome back to our Blue Z Water channel. Today, I'd like to do a video on what's called long-term COVID. And there's a quick metaphor that comes to my mind, quick imagery. And that's a pinball, and a pinball machine that never exits. It's just ping, 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 ping. And that's how it felt when I had COVID and the after effects. And this isn't just COVID, by the way, this is something like Lyme disease. It's the nature of microbes to survive, and some are more persistent and creative and innovative when they get in the body, and they will look for opportunities to survive, and they'll look for parts of your body where they can attack. So people have different issues with long-term COVID. It might be an organ of different organ systems. It could be, in my case, it was the colon. But it was first the lungs, it was the colon. Part of the long-term COVID, it might look for older situations where you had compromise, maybe previous injury. So it might be a structural issue, like I know people have had joint problems. If you have a weakness, again, in an organ. So it's very opportunistic. So the gift, in a way, is it's revealing where your weaknesses are, and it gives you an opportunity to work on those weaknesses. So as it travels around your body and literally tries to find and exploit a weakness, now you have an opportunity to strengthen that weakness. So for me, I saw it as a gift. I learned something because it was trying to work on me, and I had to increase my counterintelligence. It's much like warfare. The enemy gets smart, you get smarter. Now, I'm not going to speak here to any word cure. I'm going to make suggestions, and I'm going to really just reveal some of the strategies that I use, and you can look at some of our videos and see if the practices and protocols make sense. So this is more of a, let's say, a personal testimonial, and from being a practitioner and working with certain core systems in the body, I have had some basic insights about what needs to be worked on in general, and different approaches and different tools. So when I saw the COVID working on my body, I employed, number one, my antimicrobial program. So the antimicrobial program in general tries to hammer microbes. If they're trying to get you, you get them. What's required just in terms of a vision, it's again, these microbes are sneaky, so you need protocols that are what I call very cell permeable, whole body dynamic protocols. So I was doing a lot of ozone, but ozone goes only so far. Ozone is a gas permeable therapy. It goes into the blood, and it's known for knocking out microbes. So when you're working on a virus, a bacteria, fungus, the longer they've been in your body, the harder it is to knock them out. So this is why you need synergistic approaches. Now, the ozone is a very powerful therapy, and it can start to do the process, but I, again, believe in synergy. So along with the ozone, I have another antimicrobial therapy, which we just did a video on recently, called ESC therapy. That stands for electrostatic charge therapy. Now, this therapy, like ozone, is what I call a lightning therapy. Ozone, you actually use lightning strikes in a machine to electrify the oxygen and then put it in your body. It goes systemic to the blood. You can also do local, like sinuses, ears. But basically, there's the whole body systemic, and then you can do localized treatments. The electrostatic charge therapy is actually putting a whole field upon the body, and it actually saturates the whole body. Think of it like almost a soaker hose effect, where you're just trying to soak the entire ground. Now, the body is very stubborn. There's lots of density that's built into the cells. Cells start to die. They're very toxic. It's hard to actually get into the cell. So you really, for me, I realized doing body work, I could see parts of the body that were very stagnant. They were very hard to heal. And I was very good at reading the body, and I had techniques to really work even organs, the lymph, the fascia, go pretty deep, but there's only so far you can go, even with the tools I had at the cell level. So I started seeking out therapies that would work deep within the cell. So these microbes will look for these dead parts of the body. If they find a pocket in the colon is very toxic and stagnant, they will try to nest there. If you have a vital colon, for instance, that's called gut immunity. That means there's a huge amount of healthy flora that won't allow these competing negative organisms to exist. They basically obliterate them. It's warfare. It's flora warfare. It's microbial warfare. The electrostatic charge therapy, which once again, essentially is lightning therapy. It creates a lightning environment. The key with that therapy is that you want it to drive into the body. You want it, when it hits a wall, you want it to be able to plow through the wall. So it works in layers, but it has a very permeable effect. What makes this electrostatic charge therapy system that I'm working with successful has to do with the frequency. It spins in a vortex, which drives it in. It's not like a soaker hose. It's more like an aggressive garden hose, and it keeps driving. And it runs at a very high frequency of 300,000 hertz. And it's an electrostatic field. Like, again, electrostatic charge means it's like lightning. Some people would refer to it as negative ion therapy, but it actually has a lightning-like quality, like static electricity. So the reason I like the term lightning is because if you imagine sitting in a storm 10,000 feet in the air and had all that electricity searing through you, and you didn't get electrocuted, it would actually help you heal. It would plow through your body and has the permeability, and it would help dump a lot of toxins. And this is essentially what it's doing. So this is the coil I use. This is actually a static field coil. There's a light that lights up, and in I just turned this on to demonstrate, but in about 5 minutes time, if I hold this out around my body, it'll light up everywhere. If I hold this around the client and get near their body, their whole body would light up. Now this is a special, there's different types of coils that the system comes with. This one is what's called a pure static field coil. Now we're getting to the details of the power potential you need and the synergy you need to effectively go after these microbes. The pinball that never leaves the machine. So if you're really, really in it deep, you want to do the ozone therapy. This is how I do it. You do the ozone therapy and keep repeating it, stay on it. Then you add in this therapy. This therapy needs to have a certain power potential, and it also has what's called sine wave and square wave. So it's a little bit like Rife therapy, but the field itself is extremely healing. You don't need to do various frequencies. It's not a frequency medicine. Rife is sort of this frequency for that microbe, that frequency for that microbe. I find that it doesn't really heal the entire terrain where the microbes are feeding upon. You want to change the toxic terrain and the stagnation, and you want to go very deep into the cells, because these microorganisms will find a weak spot to hide out in. I'm going to repeat that. So you have to get deep into the body and have an effective field that the microbes hate. Now, common sense, if you were to take cancer, let's say somebody with cancer, I always say this, and take that cancer and throw it on the sidewalk for 5 minutes in the sun, it would be dead. So obviously there's something in the body the cancer is living on. So you have to start asking yourself, what is this cancer feeding on? What is this virus feeding on? It's not a hard question to ask, and it doesn't take that much of a stretch of the imagination to start inquiring about some of the things that would be unfriendly to a virus, a bacteria, a fungus, cancer, etc. So yes, light. So seek therapies that are light therapies, but the problem is light hits the body, bounces off, or it goes an inch or two. I use red light therapy, near infrared therapy on the brain. It goes an inch, but the way they say it works is that it goes 1 inch, but it's like a soaker hose. It kind of soaks down in, but it doesn't permeate very deep. So it only goes so far. If you had a tumor deep in the brain, it's not going to be that effective. Infrared therapy, light therapy, goes about 3 inches. It's like a sort of microwave effect. It goes into the body and then heats within, but only 3 inches. So again, I want to be able to get to every cell, everywhere in the body. The electrostatic charge therapy is quite permeable. So it's not going to completely just go, melt you. It's not a complete firestorm that's going to light you up. You'd be dead. But it is quite permeable. So its field is around depending on what coils you're using and what technology you're using, it can get quite the field. So it can definitely go through the body. But then there are areas of your body where you hit, there's going to be a lot of density, and they're not just going to melt instantaneously, but it's going to start to unravel that density. It's going to start to purge into the cell and pull out the toxins. Now, in order to do this therapy, this is why it's called an antimicrobial program. As you start to really engage the garbage in the body, you're going to have to prepare your organs of elimination. And number one in this therapy is the kidneys, number two, the liver. So this therapy is excellent at getting those kidneys healed. So just if you're simply just looking for therapy to heal your organs, this is a great therapy. And then they'll work better. But again, this goes deeper. It's going after all the garbage in your body and the microbes themselves. So it just keeps going in and going in. Eventually, the microbes have nothing to latch onto. So with long-term COVID, this was about 80%. I never got that sick with COVID, but and afterwards, this would keep it in abeyance, but it wasn't the total picture. So when I noticed that the COVID was going, particularly at my colon, and I've had issues with digestion on and off for years, it's an issue with my family, I started meditating and asking for the next thing to, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Now, I've studied gut immunity forever. And I was on a track at that point doing a program where I thought I could build my own natural flora, and I was making a lot of headway. I was actually growing back my own natural flora, but I never really had a great indigenous natural flora. Maybe when I was born, but it's a weakness in my family, and this I have noticed with clients. Some people are gifted with what they call the cast iron stomach. It means they have an abundance of good flora. Even if they take antibiotics, bam, they're back. They have like incredible vigilance in gut flora, and that's called gut immunity. And it literally represents about 70%, they say, of your immune system. What does that mean, gut immunity? Well, it basically means that when the gut gets toxic, if you don't have gut immunity, the gut kind of gets toxic. It builds up debris. You eat food, it putrefies. It never really completely breaks down. It has debris. You get a lot of caca in there. The caca goes to what's called post-putrefied. It hardens. But that terrain becomes opportunistic for microbes. So basically, it's a filthy environment, and you're not able to resolve that. And the microbes say, oh, great, food. So they go and they start living, and then they ask you to eat sugar and crappy food because they love that to sustain themselves. Eventually, they start leaking into your blood, and you get what's called autoimmune diseases, and you get gut-brain issues, et cetera, et cetera. It's like a huge part of getting sick. That's why they call it gut immunity. If your gut immunity is in great shape, you're stopping. This is the number one sort of epicenter of battling these microbes. They can't make a home. And even if they try to come in there and you have a healthy terrain, typically this gut immune system really affects the whole body. There's secondary effects from a vital septic tank, basically, environment in terms of chemicals that are released into the body. Your secondary immune system, if something sneaks through, now can work way better. But if this doesn't work and you're relying on your secondary immune system, it's getting overtaxed, and that's why we get into autoimmune. We have all this garbage, we can't really get rid of it. We're fighting a war with one arm tied behind our back. So I realized gut immunity a long time ago was vital, but there are different philosophies that I studied, and I was, this is an interesting kind of belief. I was always believing I could restore natural vital gut immunity. I could restore natural thyroid function, but we all have weaknesses, and then there's the environmental issues, and then there's the stress. So maybe when you're younger, if you have a ton of holistic tools, you might be able to literally do like a stem cell redoing of your entire genetic makeup. And I'm not saying you can't, but there are certain weaknesses that some of us have, and there are ways that you can compensate. So in my case, I realized that the natural flora that I was building back through my protocols wasn't working, and I needed to augment that. Now, fortunately, I spent many years studying holistic medicine, so I went literally back to the 80s, and I remembered soil bacteria. And there's a whole bunch of arguing in the probiotic community, I don't want to get into that, about probiotics and which probiotics, and that's kind of partially why I sometimes know too much. But bottom line is, I remember hearing from a buddy of mine about a probiotic that was developed for literally protection from biowarfare. And I remember all my studies of primal defense. It goes way back to the 70s, by the way, these probiotics. And I knew the whole argument about why to take soil bacteria. But I essentially, what triggered me with the COVID was biowarfare. Now, I was observing in my body the way this COVID was operating. It felt to me like it was a tweaked virus. Whether or not it was, it doesn't matter. It was definitely a sneaky, it was opportunistic, and this is where we get into the topic of this video, long-term COVID. So fortunately, I remembered this probiotic and I started taking it. And I mean, within a short period of time, I started seeing the difference. And then it's the type of probiotic where you take it, it comes from, it's a hybridized soil bacteria. They took it, put it in a lab and really worked it. I mean, a lot of scientists, a lot of money. And the goal was for biowarfare, for radiation, I mean, literally to protect soldiers, civilians exposed to these elements. So it took about 10 days to build the colony, and I've been doing it maybe 6 weeks, and then you sustain the colony. But that took care of the colon long-term COVID problem. Within probably 10 days, it was mostly gone. 6 weeks later now, the colon's doing way better. Now, of course, you have to eat reasonably, but I can now eat, I don't have to eat impeccably. And this is what happens with people who have compromised gut flora. They eat perfect. They can't eat, it's like anything they go wrong in their diet, they just suffer. Now, so this was one of the learning moments that came out of this long-term COVID, to recall everything I had learned and to remember that they had developed this probiotic for this very issue. It even states on there SARS virus in the literature. So it's very affordable. I was so impressed with it, I put it on my website. So if you look at our antimicrobial program, again, the key players in terms of really going after these heavy-duty viruses to try to reduce them. Number one, the medical ozone therapy. If you're under attack in the moment, that is definitely the go-to therapy, and the electrostatic charge therapy. So the antimicrobial program basically is just added on this gut immunity soil bacteria product. Now, we have protocols. Let's say it's going after your liver, it's going after your brain, whatever organ system. You have to identify. We have in the antimicrobial program, for instance, our whole body treatment therapy using a vibration machine and rapid release. So let's say it's trying to go for your liver. When you stand in the vibration machine, everything's moving intensively. If you've got a good quality machine, the rapid release tool is like a jackhammer, and you put it on your liver and it like power flushes your liver. So this is going to radically work on the stagnant terrain and help break up all that stagnation. So within literally a minute, you could do an incredible amount of work using those two technologies. So let's say the COVID's going after you got a sciatica thing going on. This would be a great body work protocol, because this comes out of my body work practice. So so basically what you're doing is you're working on connective tissue, organs, lymph. You can literally work at the bone level. It's very powerful. So as long as you know where the weakness is and where the COVID's trying to go, this is one huge part of my antimicrobial program. I've been doing this therapy for years. So if you look at each piece of the program, it has a vital purpose. Now, people just typically are just thinking one way or the other. So I want you to think, here's my whole body, the COVID's here, wherever. I literally want to go to that spot and do everything I can at that region to radically transform that terrain. So the idea of terrain, I want you to think simply. The idea of what stagnation means, think of a swamp. I want to make that swamp into a mountain stream. I want to take that gunky, heavy, junky liver, let's say, and break it up. So there is the bodywork side of the therapy, which is very, very powerful, and then there's a more fine-tooth cellular. There's the more fine-tooth, what I call microcellular therapies. Now, microcellular therapies all have a purpose. In this case, the ozone and the electrostatic charge therapy are highly antimicrobial. So they're very, very penetrating, and they go after microbes. There are other microcellular therapies like hydrogen therapy, for instance, that's very anti-inflammatory, very calming, but very permeable and very healing, but it's not highly antimicrobial. So you have to just understand the therapy, understand the tool, understand what you're trying to accomplish. Again, the pinball comes in, you release the pinball, and instead of eventually dumping out, which is a normal illness, it's in the machine, it just keeps going bing, 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 bing. And if it finds a little corner to nest in, it just hangs out there until you hit the machine, and then it's bing, 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 finds another place to nest. So this is kind of long-term COVID. So you have to follow the pinball. And then you have to have therapies that work dynamically. No stone unturned should be your consciousness. If there's a little nook in a corner, get to it. And understand that these therapies do that at different levels. So we'll be very happy to help you clarify a program and understand it. This is the purpose of the videos, is that you can understand each therapy, what it does. And it might be a novel way of thinking, but it's so obvious, it's so simple. I mean, let's say you had a shirt and had a stain on it. You know, you take the stain remover and rub it into the shirt. You don't even think about it. Let's say you saw your spouse about to throw the shirt in the laundry and they saw a big spot, and you knew how to do laundry. You go, man, you got to get that stain remover on there. And then maybe you have to have a specific stain remover and which one works and how long do you let it sit on there. I mean, you know the skills, but why in the body do we not have that obvious observation? So I'm asking all of you to understand that this long-term COVID, number one, we'll repeat, is looking for a weakness. And what you need to do is see as an opportunity to strengthen the weakness. So understand that you want to detoxify the body, build the immune system, primarily the gut immunity, colon terrain. Consider this soil bacteria product because these are unusual times and need unusual measures. This isn't an ordinary virus. So you need that. The soil bacteria has been called the Navy SEALs of bacteria. Now, once again, I worked with various soil bacteria products. This one that I'm put on my site, I feel works way better than this other one called Primal Defense. And I worked with that for years. I had a lot of people with Crohn's, colitis I worked with. And it's cheaper. So it's imperative to start thinking simply and obviously. Locate the weaknesses, develop the strategies to combat the weaknesses, develop global skills for immunity, once again, for antimicrobial skills. And this is just building a holistic, wise toolkit and having the vision so you know how to execute the tools. If you have any questions or want to work on this, please contact me, Andrew@bluesywater.com. Thank you.